All right, everybody. Happy Friday. It's Kate Richberg, and it's time for Free Tip Friday here at beadshop.com. We're broadcasting in all the usual places today on our Facebook page, in our Facebook group, and also on our beadshop.com YouTube channel. I'm also doing something a little bit different today. When I scheduled it, I inadvertently scheduled it, and I just thought, oh, I'm going to broadcast out to there as well because I haven't done it in a while. We're also on my page, Create with Kate Richberg, so I can see all of you all here. So it's so we're doing a little, so you guys get a little bit extra. It's not metalsmithing content, it's beading content, but I hope you guys are enjoying it anyway. So yes, as Kim noticed, I am wearing Emily's St. Petersburg earrings today. As I walked over here into the Facebook room, I saw them on the wall and just slipped them right into my ears. Beautiful. So I'm also having a little bit of extra coffee today in my tiny cup, right? Delicious tiny cup of espresso. And yes, so we've got our fantastic Gita doing a whole bunch of running around doing some linking. Christine said she'd step in and do some linking on YouTube. Janice should be here sometime today. She's got a lot on her plate this week and next. So she'll probably pop in and join us at some time. Ramona is in Albuquerque at the Balloon Fiesta, which is exciting. I've always wanted to see that. New Mexico is such a beautiful part of our country, and I've got a lot of jewelry friends that live there. Santa Fe is just an amazing place. So someday I'll get back there, I hope, and someday in time for the balloons. So that's what I'm someday I hope to. Yes, this is an espresso in a tiny cup, a little bit of illy, a little Italian this morning. So this may or may not be my third little tiny cup of coffee. I guess that's how I get everything done for sure. But without any further ado, let's get this show on the road. So when I was figuring out what the heck I was going to share with you guys today, like always, I tapped Drea on the virtual shoulder, right? And I said, hey, Drea, what should I do? And she said, you know what, we got to work with that monthly mix here at Bead Shop. So I said, great, that's a great idea. So we're working with the fire opal, and I'm going to show this, okay? Oh, and someone asked, my espresso, Shirley, I get it online at Illy, ILLY, classic Italian. Makes me feel like I want to sit around with a cigarette holder and a Fellini movie, candy cigarette in the cigarette holder. I'm not in high school smoking behind the theater. But anyway, so that's what I've got in this cup. So, all right. Let's take a look at the project then. Let me add that in. It's Friday. Our Free Tip Fridays, for those of you who are watching on my Create with Kate Richberg page, welcome. I'm really glad to have you guys here. And I'm sorry I haven't put up any metalsmithing content lately. I've been a little crazy. It's been a little crazy busy. But more metalsmithing is coming. And you guys who are watching on Bead Shop, you guys can also jump over to the Create with Kate Richberg for some metalsmithing. And those of you who are watching on my Kate Richberg group can hop on over here on beadshop.com every Wednesday and Friday. I do some wire content, some bead content. Sorry, it's not quite as dirty as it looks on screen, so I'm sorry about that. But next week I'm going to be doing some wire wrapping with, I'll just flash them real quick with these golden obsidian stones. You're going to see those next week. Anyway. So it's going to be fun, but that's next Wednesday. I've got wire on the brain. But here is this piece. Now, let me let me tell you. So I tapped Drea and she said, use the fire opal. So we've got the fire opal mix, which you can find at Bead Shop. And this fire opal mix, we've gone over it, but I'll go over it again. It's half Tyla, quarter Tyla, and A-dot seed beads here, right? So it's perfect for bead weaving or looming, as we like to say, in the bead world, though I know that the weaver side of me is like, it's not looming, it's weaving. But in the bead world, we kind of call it looming, right? So, so I thought I would revisit this. And this is a question we get a lot of times from you guys is how do I make a cuff that's wide, right? That has bead weaving as well as leather and tapers at the end. Okay, so I'm going to go over all that today. I know it's a lot for a Free Tip Friday, but whatever. I'm feeling like this is what I wanted to do. So what I'm using, so you guys know, is this is a 1.0 1 millimeter leather along the outside here, and I'm going to show you how I've attached it to my board. I'm using the design tray, the deep dish project tray here. You could also use like I did when I talked about it when we were kind of playing around with this before. I used it on the macrame board, so you could do that too. But I think you'll like how I set this up. It's pretty smart, if I do say so myself. So I've got the 1.0 leather here. You could use the 1.5, and let me show you the difference. Here's some 1.5, and this might be antique brown, maybe. This is in pumpkin, this color here. I thought it went nicely with kind of the oranges in this. So if you wanted your edges to be a little bit heavier, like so, you could pop up your leather choice. And actually, I like it in the 1.5 as well, but it looks nice in either. I think 0.5 is a little thin. Okay, so I also used a tube of the Fire Opal monthly mix, and lately we've been doing these monthly mixes with A-dots and Tyla's. The one for September also has some bugles, which I don't think would fit in here quite as well, but you could pick those out and use the other beads. But you can use just A-dots, just Tyla's if you wanted, whatever, however you wanted, but things need to work together size-wise. Okay, so 8 Tyla's, usually 2 11-aughts kind of fit in this 8-aught area, but the 11s might be a little bit small to deal with unless you do this whole thing in 11s. Okay, but for me, time was of the essence, so I used the 8-aughts here, and it was perfect for my for this piece because I like the weight of these beads and the size of these beads. And then I used KO for the warp here. You can see that. I used KO in apricot, and I also used it for my weft, my back and forth weaving here, the weft. So just find the KO that matches what your leather is, and that will work for you. I'm also going to throw in a button. This is our Flower of Life button that I really like in copper. I was thinking about using the B button, but we called this project Spooky. What did we call it? Drea had it up already, I think. We called it Spooky Times, or I thought I had it already in my head, and now I've forgotten it. Someone asked me, one of the girls asked me, what is it that you're calling this? And now I can't remember. But you can find it right on Spooky. Let's see. Is it there? I don't know. We'll find it. Someone will link it. I'm sorry. I'm thinking too much of the process and not enough on what we've called it. Spooky season. Thank you. Gita has it already. Spooky season. There it is. So we thought that this Flower of Life button kind of went with that title. But I also like this B button on it too. So whatever you like, right? Whatever works for you. And I think, though we haven't added it to the list yet, I think I'm going to use some Ceylon Esdria's ears perk up as she's listening to this, but I'm not quite sure yet of the weight or the color. So hold the phone there. All right. So what I've done is, let me show you how I've set up this board for bead weaving. Okay. If you've done any bead weaving or bead work on a loom, you know how satisfying it is. And there's a million and one patterns out there. You can go online and get like really specific patterns. You can kind of make it up. You can go on to beadshop.com and go to our tricks to looming section. And there's a whole bunch. This is kind of something that we call pebbling, where this really is super, super random. Okay, and you just kind of throw your beads on, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So here's the deep dish project tray. Okay, it's the 1 inch, it's the smaller one. And I'm going to turn it around back. And can you see how I have warped my loom here? See how it goes all the way around? So what I did, let me see if I can raise my camera even a little bit more. I took my KO, I pulled out a length, and I had maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches extra, and I wrapped it and wrapped it and wrapped it, okay, until I had enough there we go. I think I'm back. Sorry about that, you guys. I had a momentary internet glitch, but I think I'm back and running. Sorry about that. What I have here is I have 9 beads across. Can you see that? Let me count a row that has the beads. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 across. Okay. So that means I have warp threads. So many new of you are watching our lives today. It's great to have you all here. Sorry, I had a little bit of a momentary glitch there, but we should be all good. But welcome, welcome. It's great to have all of you guys here. I've wrapped this tray with the KO 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. Okay. And then on the back, I just tied it, if you can see it here, tied it in a little knot right here. So everything's tight, right? And it doesn't have to look good. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but it does have to have some, let's see if I can get this back here. It has to be tightish, right? And you can kind of, what I do is I kind of tap my fingers like this on it, and I see if it bounces nicely, and it does, and so that looks good. Okay, so so that's that story, and then I laid the two strands of leather. This length, I'll tell you, is about it's about 18 inches, which is probably way too much, but it's about a yard, and I cut it in half. Okay, and then I laid those down on my board next to the section that I wrapped for the warp threads, if that makes sense. Okay, and what I did, and I'm going to unclip them so you guys can see them. See how they're right over here, just the lengths. And I got my clampers. I'll clamp them back down here. I just laid this over the side and clamped it kind of off the edge. And that's it, really. I don't want to clamp the thread in there. Because, and this is a really great way to do it, I think, as you can see on both sides here, because if you're not really sure how you're going to close this off, you've got some options, right? This is just open edge, so you can do whatever you want to do with it. Okay. So that's kind of how I've laid this out. So you don't have to think too far ahead. And what I did was when I started my bead weaving, and I'll show you down here, I wrapped and wrapped and wrapped. Then I started my weaving in the center, okay? And I reeled off about 2 yards, I guess, of my KO, put half of my thread to one side, half my thread to the other, pulled it through so I had a really long tail, and then I wove this way, and then I flipped it over when I was running out of thread and wove it the other way with the tail. Okay, and that's the cool thing about working on kind of this box loom kind of thing is that it doesn't matter where you start, right? And so the leather, Julie's asking about the leather. The leather, I used a yard and cut it in half. So it's about a little less than that, maybe about 18 inches. But you could get a yard, cut it in half. But that should be plenty, because this actually, you don't need that much. But I also wanted to make sure that I had enough leather in case this wanted to be a wrap bracelet rather than just a woven piece. Like here with Janice's, let me show you. This is Janice's, I can't even remember what this was called. Red Delicious, I think, is what it was called. And she used this Marrakesh crimp on the end, right? And we glued it in. This one obviously is a little bit wider, but you could do something like this, weave it down, finish it off with this Marrakesh crimp. Or what I'm going to do is at these ends, I'm going to then treat it like it's a wrap bracelet. So I could close it off, put some rings on there, do some more with your wraps. I could add chain, whatever. You decide what works for you, okay? But I'm going to show you, I'm going to make this single. We're going to taper it down here at the ends, and then we'll see how it goes, okay? So let me start to measure. Again, actually, I haven't really even measured this because, no surprise, I was working on this late last night and this morning, and I haven't even measured. And of course, I just dumped some of my beads over. What a surprise. As you know, those of you who have been watching a long time, the bead's natural habitat is the floor, right? So these beads always want to go on the floor. So I've got them in my little triangle here, my little trusty triangle. So I'm going to put those aside. Also, for those of you who are watching, our 5th anniversary of broadcasting is coming up on the last Wednesday of this month of October. We're going to have a big blowout party that Wednesday. The broadcast is going to be completely insane. It's going to be awesome. So 5 years, I can't believe it. It's amazing. Some of you have been with me from the beginning, and some of you are just jumping in. So it's just great to have all of you all here. And as always, we really appreciate your support always. So let me measure. This is about 4 inches, okay? Which looks about right. You can say, I don't know, these rings were both on my desk, so I put them both on. It looks a little blingy, but I'm all right with that too. Just a quick aside, one of these spoon rings was made by my buddy Linda Dubeck, her husband Rick, and you can find them on Facebook. This was our family pattern, Eternally Yours. So I grabbed this. It reminds me of my grand. She was very proud of her silver set. So I love it. Anyway, so 4 inches. Let's see where that's going to fit. And as I was hoping, it's going to fit my wrist about here and about right here, which is about right. Okay, because I still need room to taper, and I need room for a button and a closure. Okay, my wrist size is about 6.5 inches. So hopefully the finished bracelet is going to come out at about 7 3/4 to 7.5. And this is pretty wide. Okay, so it's about 1 inch wide here, so it's got some heft to it. Gita is saying she assumes the party will be on October 27th, and that is correct. October 27th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, and it's going to be super fun. I'm still planning, but it's going to be awesome because it's 5 years. We have to celebrate, right? So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but it's going to be fun. I know 5 years, it seems crazy. And if you watch some of the older videos, um, Shirley said she's been going back and watching the older ones, and she's super glad for the close-up setup we have now. It's really true. We've evolved, but technology has also evolved over these 5 years. I'll tell you, where we started versus where we are now. I've learned a lot, so I'm really super grateful for you guys sticking with us. So let me just show you. Yeah, day drinking. Perfect, Lori. That's exactly. I may or may not have something in my cup during that party. You never know. Okay, focus. I know it's Free Tip Friday. It's always a little more casual, and I'm always a little more chatty. So thanks for sticking with me on this. Okay, so we've got 9 little channels here. So just as a reminder for you guys for bead weaving, I like to start from the left and go to the right because I'm right-handed, so that's how I do it. So I'm going to pick up 9 beads. So 1, 2, 3, and one of those I'm going to make a half tila, so that's 4, and 5, and you can see how random this is, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Now I come up below my looming section here, and I push those beads up from the bottom. Okay, now if you use a half tila right here, you're going to treat this bead going this way. The thread path goes through the beads, and then it just comes up and around, and it follows that very same thread path. See, with my needle, and I'm pushing this up so that the beads kind of have a little open tunnel at the top. And now I'm going to do one more because I've got to catch this, the second hole of the tila. So let me dump out a few more beads here and go 1, 2, 3. Then I have to put it through this bottom hole here. And then I need 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Put them through. Push them up. Make sure I kind of push the thread with my thumbnail kind of down and run it across. So all of these little warp threads get kind of caught between each bead. Then I can just slide my needle through. Now I'm going to put a just one more plain round here to finish this off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And we'll slide that through. And you just keep going, right? And as I said, when I ran out of thread going one direction, I went the other direction, threaded the tail with my needle, and wove in the opposite direction that way. Okay, adding 2 quarter tilas or a regular half tila, right? Depending on where I wanted to put it. Now, this is a great question. Since I'm a weaver, Lori, the terms weft and warp are very familiar to me, but thank you for bringing this up because it's not as familiar to everyone. So it's a great question. So the warp, when you warp a loom or we're warping this board, the warp, think of it, is what the beads or the thread that's running from north to south on this, right? It's the beads that create the individual channels here. Now the weft is your working thread, and I remember that because your working thread moves from the right, from the left to the right rather, and left, at least for me, left rhymes with weft, right? So I know that's my working thread. So the warp is the threads that you, as we say, charge the loom or thread the loom with, and the weft is your working thread going back and forth, what your beads are strung on. And I'm using KO for this, okay? So you can see here where I added my thread in. So you're going to run out of thread. You're going to loom, 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 and your thread's going to get short. So you want to wait. You don't want to go past your thread being about this length, which is, you're saying, that's great, Kate, but what's that length? About 6 or 7 inches, okay? Because you're going to have to weave that back in. And so I'm going to weave this tail in right now. I'll show you how I do it. I left it out here. And I've done it a few times and I've added some thread. You add thread the same way that you weave it out. And so what I do is I leave this tail and then I start kind of back here somewhere and weave my thread up, a new thread. Then I'll leave that thread and then I'll take away this tail. I'll weave this thread back. And I left this for you guys so I could show you how I do it. But don't be afraid of adding your thread in. Especially with this, we're going to have to weave all of these warp threads back in too. Okay, so, but no, don't worry. I'm going to wax the end of this thread. I didn't wax any of this because I was sitting in the other room and I didn't have my waxing with me. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to go get it. So, but you can, especially waxing the tip of your thread, I think helps you to thread your needle a little bit better. So I'm going to go in. I could just come around the side and I wouldn't see those 2 threads here, but you can, if you want to, just pop your needle up in between some of your weaving, and then you can go back through or go down one if you want, like this. And then basically you just weave back and forth here. I went through that one. Now I'll go through this one. Sorry, it's a little out of my focal range for this. So bear with me. And weaving back through these these quarter tiles can be a little bit of a challenge, but if you pull that row down, then that needle can go through, and then I'll skip over. Make sure that you're not skipping any beads so you have like a little path of thread that shows. But it's easier for me to slip these through the 8/0 than it is through those tiles. So I'm going to go back through, zigzag. Then I'm going to turn the corner on this, 1, 2, 3. Turn the corner here. I don't do any knotting in my pieces. All I do is weave back through. You could tie a knot around with this thread around one of the warp threads, but I honestly think it just creates a knot that can be seen and isn't any more secure. Okay, so see, I've taken it from like over here all the way down here. All right, so now I'm going to come in and I'm going to clip this away using my thread snips. Okay. Christine has a good way to remember warp and weft. Warp, A, the first letter in the alphabet, so it's the first thing you do, string the warp. And weft, E, is, as you weave, it kind of looks like an E. That's very clever. That's also a good way to remember the warp and the weft. So here we go. So that's been woven back. So now I'm going to lift this up I'm going to get my beads. And this is the moment that makes my heart skip a beat just a little, but not really, because I know what I'm doing. So don't be afraid to do this part. I'm being over dramatic. So now, me over dramatic, what a surprise. So here we go. I'm going to take this off here, and I need to take the warp, everything off, because now it's becoming kind of like it's going from a loomed project or a woven project to a wrap bracelet kind of a project. Okay, so I'm going to take off these clampers. I'm going to take off this needle for now because I don't want it to fall off onto the floor and then I won't find it. I'll just re-thread my needle. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut this off the board. So let's flip it. And I'm going to cut right in the center, right here. There we go. So what I've got is this. And this does have a front and the back because these tilas right here, the half tilas, are directional. They have this coating on one side and then they're black on the other, which also looks cool. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to check this length, and this looks about right because I'm going to taper it to about here, and about here I'll put the button on, I'll have the loop. So let me measure this one more time because I've added a couple of rows. Right? Lisa says, it is true with the courage of your conviction. That's right. You just have to do it, right? And who cares? I mean, this looming, it didn't take me that long to weave this portion, right? That's about 4.5 inches. Okay. So now we have to decide how we're going to do this. And I think, so I want to bring my pieces in and I want to fill this up with beads here and taper it down. Okay. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to take these warp threads and weave them in. And I'm only going to weave a couple in, and then I'll finish those off later. Let's see how far I get. So here's one. I'm taking one of these, right? The one that's closest to the top here. And I'm going to get my needle. Thread it. And I'm going to weave it through. I'm making sure that the thread, the warp thread, is coming from the bottom and around so it captures this first line of weaving. And I'm just going to go down and through these two. And everything will tighten up as I weave. So this right now is a little loosey-goosey, but I'm just rolling with the punches here. So just go with me here. So I'll weave it, I don't know, 2, then 3. Whoops, my needle came off. So I'm going to call that one a day, at least for now. Okay, push my beads back down to get rid of that looseness and thread this next one. And I probably want to thread back a little further, but in the interest of time here, I'm just going to kind of keep going. So that one I went over, and I'll come through here to these. I could make them meet up and I could tie a knot, but I don't think I will. though I could. Okay. And since it's on the back, let me tighten this back down, this warp. Here are my 2 threads. I don't know, it's always a controversy. You know, some bead weavers are like, yes, we're going to tie a knot. And some bead weavers are like, no, you never tie a knot. So I don't know, you do what you feel. So see, there's that. I did that overhand knot right there, right? And then here, right over left, left over right. And then I could add just a little drop of glue right there if I wanted to on that knot. But I'm going to keep weaving. So let me get this one. And I'll just do one more, and then I'll try and tame these threads so you guys can see what I'm going to do. Though we're doing okay on time. See if I can get that in there. Needle the thread, don't thread the needle. Go around to the back. Try and see through all of this crazy thread business and just weave it in. See, and again, if it loosens like this, that's okay. You're just going to push it back. Everything will tighten more as you weave in. Okay, so these are the rest of my threads that I need to weave in later. So I'm going to lay those to the back. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to get a piece of tape and tape those suckers down so they won't bother me. I don't know where my tape ended up, but I'm going to get another. Let me get some right here. And we'll tape it down. Though I would probably weave all of these in before I go any further. See, Lori's like, nope, no knots in any of my weaving, fiber or bead. I'm with you, Lori. I am not a knotter either, right? But some people, they knot. I'm not going to shame them, I guess, in public. I'll do it later at home when I'm weaving in my ends, right? But it's true. I am not a knotter either. So here's that long weft thread that I had, and I'm going to come in and just tape these down. I can untape them later, but we're going to pretend that all of those are woven in. Okay, that gives me a nice clean edge. Let me just bend those over so I don't stick to anything. Okay, so basically, when you have woven, this is what you've got left. Okay, so now I'm going to attach this to the board like it was a wrap bracelet. So I'm going to clamp it here. For now, I'm going to bring all of this business down here, because I'll do the same on the reverse, right, on this opposite end. But for now, I'm just going to clip it, just so I've got some tightness here. And I'm going to go back through and weave a couple of items in here. Now, under projects, you've seen me do this before in the leather and looming. We've got a whole leather and looming section. And in the piece called Sea Star Wrap, you've seen me do this. And it wasn't quite, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8. It was actually 8 across instead of 9. So that's another good one that you can reference. But for the top of this, I'm going to add a button. So it just depends on, I've got open edges here. So you can use something like I did over here. You can use the distressed end cap, like the petite distressed end cap would probably look good. You can throw those in and then add like a clasp on. But I want a button on this one. So I'm going to, let me get back to this page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to taper down as I bead weave now, kind of like a wrap bracelet, and then I'm going to add my button on this end. Okay. So, let me see. I'm looking to see. Veronica has a question that I'll answer now. How noticeable difference is the extra deep dish compared to the original? It's just taller, really. That's all it is. And I've been using the deep dish for so long that I kind of forget that we carry them deeper, the 1.5 inches. But either will work. The taller ones give you a little more room in between if you like that. But I think you'll be fine with either. Especially with this, you could do this on the extra deep is fine. So I think you'll be all right, and then decide if you want to add it later, you can add it later. So I ran that thread back through here just so I have a little more heft kind of here at this final line of stringing. And I could ladder up going this way, but I think I'm actually going to turn everything around. Okay. Now, Kim is saying a stitch-in piece, you could make a piece and stitch it in. That would also work. You could make it with like peyote stitch or brick stitch or whatever and stitch it in. But I'm going to do this as if it were a wrap. So here we go. So I'm going to get 8 beads, and I'm just going to do this with the 8/0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I'm going to do this with infinity stitch. Oops, so this needs to be underneath here. There we go. And I'm bringing this under. And see how it's just a little smaller, the 8 beads, than the 9 beads that we had. There we go. Bring it through. And I'm actually doing this in the opposite direction than I would normally. So I might reverse this so it doesn't look so funny. So there's that one. Let me bring this under. I'm going to move my needle position because usually when I infinity stitch, I also infinity stitch from the left to the right. So let me rethread this needle that just fell off my thread. And I'm going to travel this needle over. That way, because my muscle memory is going from the left to the right. So let me just go, I'm going to pop this down. Or up as the case may be in this case. Bring this through. Connect it over here. And there we have it. Now you want to be really careful with your tension on this. You don't want this to buckle too much. So I'm just gonna kind of flatten it out a little bit there. Check that tension. Once this is all stitched in and I macrame it over here, right? It's gonna sit just fine. So you kind of have to go with it. Again, it looks a little funny, these first couple of rows. So if that was 8, let's do 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Again, completely random. And infinity stitch. So over the left, under the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I knew I was short a bead. 7. There we go. Get over there. There we go. And back through. And if your beads, it's actually, I think it's kind of a good thing that I haven't gotten rid of all of these warp threads over here, right? Because what I can do is if these threads that I'm putting in here, if they're having a tendency to shift, like this row where I moved my needle to over here, it wants to move a bit. So I can just take those warp threads and not only stitch down, but I can stitch up too, and it'll make this connection all that much stronger, you know, more stable, I guess. So let me dump out a few more beads here. So that was 7. So now I'm on 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These all, I kind of put a lot of blue in this one, but that's all right. Doesn't matter. I also, if I need to move this down, I'm working in this tiny little section here. So I'm going to move this up a bit, just so I've got a little more, as Janice likes to say, air to work with. So here's my 6, push it up, go back through. We've got a really good skill builder on beadshop.com on the infinity stitch. If you're not familiar, it's one of the basics here kind of that we use for our wrap bracelets. At least it's my go-to, right? So so that's a good thing. So I'm looking for, Lynn has a quick question. Is there a reason for not going through the last row of loom beads to attach it to the first row of infinity to stabilize the rows? I could, right? So I could come in, I could go back through, I could go back down, back up here, and stabilize it that way. I think though, Lynn, in my mind, I still have these warp threads that I have to deal with. So I think I'm going to use those to stabilize. But you could do the same thing. You could do it that way by just kind of attaching it to the row below it. Would also work. 2, 5. I think I'm on 5. Okay. So you can see this is starting to close up here, which looks good. And that one place where I repositioned the needle, it's a little funny, but I can stitch it in place. I can come back and stitch it. So I'm not overly fussed about it. Don't pull this too tight or else you're going to have buckling. Okay, so don't stress about that. Let's go to our 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Almost there. And I can also use, I've got plenty of this thread that I'm doing the infinity stitch with. I can also bring this back down to stabilize. There's 4, 1, 2, and 3. And down. So close to. And I'm not using any of the half or quarter tilas for this end because it's just too much of a pain, I think, to add those in at this juncture. So I'm not going to worry about it. And then here's my final one. Now on the last one, I'm going to go back through and do this. And Hale's asking, why don't I just drop one bead at a time while I'm weaving? I could do that. I would still have all of those ends that I would have to kind of weave through. You could certainly, though, try that out and see how that works for you, right? So here's my closure, okay? And so I'm going to come in and I'm going to unclamp this. And now I'm going to stabilize this and weave all this back in. Okay, so here's my needle. And I'm going to go back through this one. I could also have this down on my board, but I feel like I want to hold it in my hands. So if that's the feeling you get, that's good. And see how this weaving back through also kind of connects these a little bit and stitches them in pretty nicely. I'm going to go all the way to the edge for that one. This one right here. I think there's more ways than one to achieve this kind of look. So I'd be really interested if you decide to try this. I'd like to know what you use. We can share it, but you can see with just a little bit extra thread. This is why when I weave, I don't weave with a double thread. I like to have a lot of room in my beads so I can really go back and forth and stabilize everything. So here's this row that was giving me a little bit of grief, right? It wasn't sitting as nicely as I liked. So I'm just going to stitch it. See right there, that end. So I'm going to keep going to the end of that row. The great thing about bead weaving is you can just kind of stitch and stabilize and add your beads, or kind of, a little bit of thread running through there is going to take a lot of that wiggling around out of there. So there we go. See that? They're stitched right into place. We were doing some little stitching on Janice's piece the other day, right? So I'm pretty adept with a needle. So something like this doesn't really fuss me. But with a little bit of practice, see, now that's really nice and stable in there. And with all of these warp threads, I'm going to come in and I'm going to just stitch them right in around through here, and it's going to stabilize all this. Hale is saying, way too many little beads. Sometimes, I agree. That's why I'm using 8s, because if I were doing this with size 11s, I would not be a super happy camper, really. So anyway, you can see what I'm doing here. So now I know you want to see me close this off. So let me close it. Okay, I'm going to table this for a little bit, and then I'll come in and play around with that closure. Okay, so here, let me get this back to, because remember, now it's no longer a loomed piece. Now it's more of a wrap bracelet. Okay, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to clamp this down to my board right here. And I'm going to grab a piece of, I have regular Ceylon sitting here. I might want to use fine. I don't know. Seems like I have a whole bunch of regular. So you could use fine or regular. I'm going to use this regular. I think this is Capri, maybe. I don't know. But I'm going to use that. And I'm going to macrame. And how I'm going to do this is I'm just going to come in and I think, you could macrame or you could silk wrap this. Let me see if I can find my button. So this is the Flower of Life button. Okay. So I'm going to come in and let me make these even so I don't have to fuss with them too much. And I'm going to go through. If you can't get both of these through the shank of your button, you can do what Janice has done sometimes, and she put one through and the other one just rides along the side. Okay, but both of these happen to fit. And I'm going to bring this around, and actually I'm going to put it just right here at the top, I think, because usually when I macrame, I like to macrame down. Let me see, I need a little leash. And you can mix the half and the quarters. That's what I've done here of those Tila beads. You can mix those up because 2 of the quarters equal 1 of the half. So there we go. There's my little leash here. I'll put my button in. I'm going to do this from what I'm calling the back of the bracelet, just in case. Here's this over here. Now this is going to come through. And it's going to bend over like this. So I'm going to clamp. Let me see. I know I've got another clamp here. And I'm clamping it to the board. So here's the big overview. Can you see how I've kind of rigged this up? Here's where I'm going to macrame. Here's tight kind of on the board, so everything is kind of taut, so my macrame will be nice and clean. And I've cut a piece, so I don't know, this is maybe a little less than a yard of my regular Ceylon. Now, I want my thread, my cord here, to come over and be nice and tight. So it lays, there's no little twisty in here. Okay, if that makes sense. I put it there at an angle so it's all together. Now I'm also going to lift this up a little bit with my spool. I know this looks a little bit like the dog's breakfast, but I promise you it's going to look good once we're done. And I just have to go long enough with this clamp here so that everything stays in place. Now we've got a couple of really great tutorials on this flat macrame knot, but essentially I'm just doing this flat macrame like we've done many times before. going from the right and then to the left, a pair of half hitch knots, making that full macrame knot. This could also be a silk wrap, which I like. This first little knot always gives you grief, so I hold it tight, I kind of put my finger on there, and then I tighten that second one up to it. There we go. I'm going to do one more set, and then I'm going to remove the clamper. It's like doing little surgery. Where's my team of bead OR nurses here to cheer me on? Well, you guys are out there, but to wipe my brow, right? That one didn't go right. You know what? I think I can remove this now. There we go. It's tight enough. It's just getting in my way and flopping around. There we go. So I'm going to macrame this until I've reached about right here. And I don't think I need glue. I mean, you could glue, but let me show you what I'm going to do with this. There we go. I could use the trick where I macrameed over that needle and bring these strands back through. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of glue. So I'm going to add it there with my GS Hypo here. And a little like line over the top. And through. There we go, and see it's grabbed that glue. Sometimes what you can also do before you tighten that last stitch, you add your little bit of glue there. This GS Hypo is the way to go for this, not Zap. Zap is too stiff for this. And again, this is all on the back. And when this when this GS dries, it's going to be a nice firm closure. I'm going to put a little bit more glue there, and I'm going to do 2 more stitches. Now, if this were real jewelry making time and not Kate on camera demoing time, I would let everything sit overnight. Use your toothpick there to spread that glue out. I would let everything sit overnight before I clipped anything away. Now here's my final knot. Come in and tighten. Back up there. There we go. I think I'm back up. Sorry about that. The internet's a little spotty today. I'm not sure what the issue is here. Right at the exciting moment, right? And what I'll do is I'll come in with my thread burner and I'll clip here and here. And I could just come in and clip off this extra cord right here. And I'm going to clip that cord right there now. But I'll come in and get rid of that later. So let's take a look at this closure and look at how nice this looks. Whoops, I've got all these extra beads and stuff here. But look at how nice this closure looks here, right? And then for the other side, what I'll do is I'll stop, I'll do my closure like I did there. And then I'm going to do a macrame here, leave an opening for the button, do a macrame there or a knot or anything like that. And and then it'll have my button. But you can see how nicely this is just going to sit just like that and be ready to go. Okay, but that's it. That is all she wrote. I'm looking at, yes, so Veronica's asking, do you recommend the original GS versus the fabric? I do. We use the original. We used to carry the fabric version back when we had a brick and mortar, and I've used it. But I've used this regular GS for all of these threads, and I'm really happy with it. So this regular GS you could use. Though if you do have the fabric, you might want to experiment with it. Um, so um, so we'll see how it goes. So again, yeah, sorry the internet was a little spotty, you guys, but it should be seamless in the replay. So again, sorry about that. So what I have to do here is do this other side, weave all of these ends. I'm going to untape, weave all of this in, and I should be good to go. So I think that poke around. This is a really great project for busting your stash that you might have at home. But to just go over what I've got here for you is the monthly mix, a tube of the October monthly mix. And we don't restock it. So once this fire opal, we're doing birthstones this year for 2021. Once this fire opal is sold out, it's sold out. So this is our monthly mix for October right here. So that I used a 1 millimeter leather for the sides of this, though as I said earlier, you could use the 1.5 millimeter if you liked. I used the KO in apricot, which I've lost the spool. Here it is. There we go. And I used a size 10 beading needle for the weaving. And so Julie, to add to close the other one out, I'll just do the same thing. I'll bring everything here in, I'll macrame, and I'll have my long piece of leather here. I'll macrame up a little bit, maybe 5 or 6 stitches. I'll leave an opening for the hole, for the buttonhole, and then I'll bring my leather together again and macrame it down. So if I have, let me see if I have anything like that that I can show you. But it's something, yeah, just like this. See this one that Drea did? So she's macrameed here, macrame, 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 left that opening, and then knotted it or macrameed here. Okay, so that's it. So it'll just come in and close up like that. That's it. Okay, super easy. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So here I am. So thank you guys so much for joining me. We ran a little bit late on this one because, we got really into this bead weaving. I will finish this one up, and Claire will have it up on the projects page for spooky season. You'll see this. And next week I have a wire project for you guys right here. So you will see this fun stuff right here for you. So we'll have a good time next Wednesday. We're going to do some wire wrapping, all of that. Okay, so, and Janet says, I'm glad you like it. Janet says, for anyone who hasn't seen this mix, hers came in a few days ago and it's even more beautiful in person. I'm glad you like it, everybody. It's a fun one. The colorway is unusual, but I think it's a fun kind of vibrant fall mix. So thank you, everybody. I will see all of you all next Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining me. And of course, you can find all of the projects, information on the project and the products from today's broadcast right on our website. And make sure you sign up for our newsletter for the latest discounts, giveaways, and new products. You just go right to beadshop.com. There'll be more on the release of these really cool oval, semi-precious ovals that we're releasing next week that I'm using in the project for next week. And of course, you guys don't forget to follow us on all of our social at beadshop.com on Insta, join us over at the Bead Table on our Bead Shop group. And you can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at beadshop.com. And we appreciate those thumbs up, those likes, and those shares. It just helps other beaders find us and be more creative, right? So thanks again. We super appreciate, as always, your support. And I will see you next Wednesday for Bead Shop Live. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great weekend.